If you need a coach, it's really important to define why you would want the coach and then organize the relationship properly. So, first of all, you want to start with what is my purpose in getting a coach? And so think about it, do a little bit of thought work for yourself. What is it that I would like to achieve with having a coach? Am I struggling in my current role? Have I run into some problem I can't solve? Do I have problems with my boss? Is my influence not as good as I need it to be? There are lots of different coaches out there and they cover different things. One of the ones I get asked a lot for is executive presence coaches or people for presentation coaching.
This is the Being Coachable podcast with your host, Jill Chappie. Get ready to challenge your assumptions, expand your thinking, and walk away with concrete steps to help you level up your leadership, business acumen, and personal growth. It's time to get coachable.
Hello, and welcome to episode 2 of the Being Coachable podcast. Today we are talking about how do you choose an executive coach, and that includes if you need one or not. And I want you to understand if you need one, which type you need, and how to get the most out of the relationship as well. My name is Jill Chappie. I've been an executive coach since the year 2000. Yes, that sounds a little bit sci-fi, doesn't it? But it's true. So let me tell you a quick story about how I started in executive coaching. So I did have a business degree. I'd worked in business. I did some economic studies in Spain, actually, as I was finishing up my undergrad and graduate degrees. And I was always had an interest in business, but I also had an interest in people. And so I decided that coaching was the route to go for me, but I wanted to get some business experience first. I did that and then ultimately ended up working with the woman who was the executive coach for Michael Dell and Bill Gates and a few other very famous people. And I worked in her business for a couple of years and worked with her on understanding business, understanding how to assess executives, and then how to be an executive coach. And then after that, I started out on my own as an executive coach. So I've worked largely with technology companies and lately mostly the SaaS field. So software as a service, if you know what that is. And if you're watching this and you are in SaaS, of course you know what that is. And that is my field. Mostly been in SaaS companies for the last 15 years or so, but technology companies for the last 24. So it's interesting though, even my family sometimes doesn't understand what I do. As an executive coach, it's a little bit different type of career. And so it's hard to understand sometimes exactly what's done. There are also lots of types of executive coaches. There are also coaches for everything else you can imagine. There are diet coaches, life coaches, personal coaches, obviously coaches in sports. That's a whole separate category. But with regard to executive coaches, I want to explain what they are and what they can do for you, and specifically what I do in my role. So, this episode of my podcast is for anyone in the corporate world, really, or anyone who runs a business too. If you think about being the executive of your business, I'll talk about what exactly an executive is because sometimes people have a misunderstanding about that too. But particularly if you work in a fast paced corporate environment where you might need to hire a coach for yourself, this episode is for you. So, if you've wondered if you needed a coach, this will help you as well. So, I want to define some terms first. So, what is an executive? So, an executive is somebody who's at the highest level of a company. Now, at the corporate level, so if we're looking at a corporation that's, let's say, a Fortune 500 size corporation, they're going to have people who sit at, let's say, the VP, or sometimes there's a layer right below VP where they run like a business unit. That could be called an associate VP, or there are all kinds of other titles, senior director, even sometimes. If the person runs a business unit that's fairly substantial at that level, or VP or above, that person is an executive in the company. So, an executive is somebody who runs a fairly large team and really has quite a lot of responsibility for a business unit. And specifically, what this word means, what it comes from, is ex sequi. These are two Latin words. And these words mean to follow through completely. So the executive ultimately is the one who bears the complete responsibility for whether or not something gets done in a business unit or a business overall. So if we think about a chief executive officer, chief being the top or the top of the pyramid, right? The chief executive officer, executive being that person who follows through or carries through things completely, gets complete execution on those things. So that would be a CEO. So an executive is somebody who has that responsibility and also hopefully has that capability to get things done in a business. So, really, what's expected of executives is that they get things done. They have to get wins. You've probably seen this out in the news. For example, you may have seen people who are executives who get fired because they don't get results on something. On the opposite side of the coin, you've seen people who should have been fired and weren't because they didn't get something done. Now, of course, anybody who's an executive in a business can run into a problem. That's different. And that problem might be something that then keeps them from getting results at that time. But if they have a track record of results, this is one of those examples where they might need a coach. So let's say you've got, for example, a head of revenue, a head of sales, who for a long time has been doing really well, great results, keeps getting promoted, bigger team growth. And then all of a sudden something happens and the person's not doing as well as they were before. Well, this is a time for a coach because what do you want to do with that? You want to troubleshoot it. So that's why I want to talk about why this topic is important for you, thinking about some of the scenarios in which you might need a coach and which type of coach you might need in that scenario. So, most people don't know the types of coaches out there or where to look for one. So, there are coaches, for example, career coaches. These are people who help you think through whether you want to change careers, if you're in the right career, if the career is fulfilling for you, if it fits your personality, etc. I am not that type of coach, although I've done occasional bits of that. I tend to work internally in an organization to do troubleshooting and to help leadership develop the people internally in the organization, which means I can't be a career coach for you because if you, for example, want to leave that organization, I can't be part of the advice for that because the organization has hired me. So there are internal coaches and then there are external coaches as well. So you can pay for the coach yourself, and that's a self pay situation. It's a bit expensive at times, especially if you're going to get a good coach, of course, but then that person could coach you on things like your career. If you have an internal coach, usually the company pays, and then that's a situation where you're going to be developed to do the best you can in that company that you're currently in. I'll talk more about this in a moment. So, if you need a coach, it's really important to define why you would want the coach and then organize the relationship properly. So, first of all, you want to start with what is my purpose in getting a coach? And so think about it, do a little bit of thought work for yourself. What is it that I would like to achieve with having a coach? Am I struggling in my current role? Have I run into some problem I can't solve? Do I have problems with my boss? Is my influence not as good as I need it to be? And I have a particular coach for that one and who's going to be a guest on my podcast later in a later episode. But there are lots of different coaches out there and they cover different things. One of the ones I get asked a lot for is executive presence coaches or people for presentation coaching. And there are actually quite a few great companies that do that. And I can, of course, give you links and referrals for any of those things that I don't personally cover. So, if you do need a coach and you've decided you want to hire a coach, define why you want the coach and then organize the relationship properly. So, think about what you want, set goals, and then you're going to work on those goals together. And then you want to know what success looks like. So, minimally, you're going to want to have some goals for the relationship and a set period of time. So, mine are usually either 3 months or 6 months in terms of engagements. I also tend to work more in groups. Some people work more one on one coaching. I do a little bit of, but it's obviously very time constrained. It's difficult. There's only one of me to go around. So working in groups works a little bit better and working on structure of things, working on projects, for example, versus working one on one with a person just tends to be a little bit time consuming. But if you want to get the most out of it, the great news is that there are all kinds of tools for you these days. So you can get on a Slack channel together, or you can have collaborative tools of all kinds and varieties. There are project management tools, prep forms, etc. Anything you can imagine to help you get the most out of your relationship with your coach. But key topics that I cover in my coaching are things like how to influence inside an organization, especially if you sit at the VP level, even the SVP level, you are working cross-functionally most of the time, which means you're working with other functions in the business. That's not always easy because these are people who don't report to you, you don't have any authority over them, and you still have to somehow influence them, build relationships, and get things done. So influence is a key topic that I cover. Overall business structure, if your team or your business is structured properly for good flow and making sure that you're not getting internal organizational tension that shouldn't be there, that's a topic that I cover. Knowledge base of certain key business topics. Sometimes you get somebody in a role, let's say it's a sales role, for example, they really know how to sell, but they don't know how to manage a team. Well, that key knowledge base would be something that I can help with. Or they know how to manage a team, but they're missing specific parts or specific competencies that I can help with for them managing a team. How to be seen and heard in an organization, messaging, running a team, talent assessment. And then I would say probably my sweet spot is troubleshooting. So if things are going well for an executive or have been going well for a while and then suddenly are not going well, that's an area that is definitely my sweet spot. Things I don't cover. I don't cover who to hire and fire. I never get into that because there's a lot of reasons, but also there are consulting organizations, recruiting organizations, and other people who cover those areas. So that's not my area. I don't get into career coaching, like I said, because I normally work internally in an organization. So therefore, if you want to do something different or want to move outside the organization, that's not really my cup of tea. I have done small parts of it where the person self pays for some career coaching from me. But again, it's not my main area. And then I don't do life coaching. So I'm not going to help you with, how to get along better with your partner or anything like that. It's funny because executive coaching, business coaching, life coaching, all of these things get confused and muddled sometimes. But executive coaching is what I do. So it's for executives, again, VP level and above in a corporate environment. And when they're trying to advance their career, improve themselves, do leadership development for their team, those are the areas that I cover. But like I said, there are many coaches out there, and including sports coaches. And it's a very interesting thing because sometimes people say, well, do I need a coach? I'm not sure. And then there's this kind of idea that floats out in the internet universe that is, well, if Tiger Woods has a coach or if Michael Jordan had a coach, why wouldn't you need one too? And it's an interesting point, and it's very true. If you think about on a sports team, they're trying to win. In a business, you're trying to win also. Now, that's a whole other topic for another day, thinking about the difference between a sports game and a business game. But we'll leave that aside for a moment and say it's true that there's a huge value that a coach brings in a sports environment. Taking a look at what the ideal should be, making sure that troubleshooting again, like if a person needs to be going a certain direction and they're not going that direction, coaches are great for that. So in the sports context, you can think about how helpful and valuable that is to have the outside perspective, somebody really running the show. Really what this is in an organization is it is the executives, it is the leader of the team or the manager of a team. And so they have to have coaching skills. And that's what I think a lot of people are unaware of is what are some of the skills of coaching that are required for running a team and then expanding a business. So that's what I help with largely.
Are you hitting a wall as a leader? Do you need an outside perspective to gain clarity and direction? Jill Chappie has over 20 years of experience as an executive coach, helping leaders get unstuck and achieve their goals. She offers straight talk combined with empathy and humor to challenge your assumptions, expand your thinking, reveal your blind spots, and equip you with concrete action steps. If you're ready to level up your leadership and get coachable, click on Leadership Assessment at becoachable.com and then email to schedule your readout. Cost is $99 to get your results. Invest in yourself and your growth. You'll walk away feeling informed, empowered, and ready to implement change. Let's get coachable.
So, a little bit of a story. I want to tell you one of my first engagements that I ever had, first large engagement, I should say. It was a 12-member executive team. I was brought in by a board member to help a company make this executive team more cohesive. So, these were all, it was a C-level group of people and then one layer right below that. So there was a CEO of this business, and then there was a chief marketing officer, a chief revenue officer, which was sales, and a chief operating officer. So that was one layer right below the CEO. And then all of the other people were SVP level. So they were reporting to, for example, the chief operating officer. And there were business units for this executive team, and each executive covered a various business unit. So when I came in, what I did first was we did 360 assessments on each executive. Why did we do that? We wanted to see if the person was doing well or if they weren't doing well, and then where they could be doing better. And we plotted out a trajectory and a course for each of them. So, for example, one of the executives, the business had been doing okay, but there was an opportunity at this point in the market for this particular business unit he was running, and we wanted to basically double the revenue of that particular business unit. So that was the goal on coaching, was what are we going to do to double the revenue of this business unit and take advantage of this wave that was coming in for this business. And so that's what we did. So that was an example of one 360 and the result of it. Now, there was one person that when we did the 360, it was kind of determined this person didn't really fit in the role that they were in. So then the decision point came. And again, I don't do hiring and firing. I just take a look at, does this person fit in their current role? And so I spoke with the CEO at this point and I said, I don't think this person is fitting well in the current role. Do we want to find another role for this person, or what do you want to do? Because ultimately that's up to the CEO, because it's their team. So they could really love that person, want to keep that person, want to adjust the role for that person. That is what ended up happening, by the way. Person moved into a different team and actually flourished there. Now, I might have made a different decision, but it's not up to me. I'm only the coach. I am not the manager of that team. So I can give thoughts, I can give direction, but ultimately what the outcome is the responsibility of the person in coaching. I can only guide and direct. And one of the things about coaching is that we help people see their blind spots because it's an exterior view. So I talked a little bit in the last podcast about being coachable and how sometimes you can have something that's like this that you're not aware of. It's a blind spot, and the coach can help you pull that off and take a look at it. So sometimes we can have a blind spot around people on our team. We have a soft spot for somebody. We allow them to have bad performance because we have that soft spot. That's the type of thing that a coach can help with. And then they can also take your best performers and make them even better. So the outcome of this particular coaching engagement with these 12 executives was we had basically 1.7x to the revenue for the entire business unit. And they were now I would call it the showcase piece of the larger company that they sat inside. And so immediately after wrapping up this coaching engagement, took about a year, by the way, we were invited to come to the board to talk about our successes and what had worked really well there. And that was ultimately how I springboarded into another role with somebody else who left and went to another company and brought me along for the executive team there. So, of course, if you're a coach, what do you want for your people? You want success. Tiger Woods' coach or Michael Jordan's coach or any of the other Tom Brady's coach, what do they want? They want their players to win. Same for an executive coach. We want you to win. So when you're choosing an executive coach, you want to think about who is going to help me win. So of course you want a track record of somebody who has coached other people to success in your area. Now I mentioned a coach that I have that I work with in my network. So if it's something that, if I get a call for something and I feel like it's not quite my sweet spot, I always want to refer so that person can win with a different coach. And I do have an executive coach in my network, and she's particularly good at working with introverted people, so people who tend to be on the quieter side, and helping them to be seen and heard in an organization. That's an example of a small niche in coaching that there are quite a few of those out there, by the way, but that's a particular one, and she's particularly good at it. So if you tend to be introverted, and she works particularly well with female leaders, but really any leader who's introverted, she's great. So something to think about is, what specifically do you want? And then how do you find a coach that matches that? And sometimes you're going to have to ask around. It's not that there's this one big place that you can go to and look for all the different coaches who are possible and pick the right one. Honestly, it's a lot of word of mouth referral. But the truth is, that's true in any part of business, right? So it's just the same. When you're looking for a coach, you're going to have to ask around and get some information from others as to who they've worked with that has worked well for them. Okay, so I hope I've given you some information that has helped you about what executive coaching is, how to choose an executive coach, and then how to set yourself up for success. Of course, there's more to know about this. I'm just starting right now to write a more in-depth workbook for clients that I work with. But to be honest, I do very little one-on-one coaching right now. So I have a group of 5 people that I coach one-on-one. And if I have an open slot, I have an open slot. But right now I don't actually. I don't even have any openings in one-on-one coaching. So this is why I'm putting together courses and podcasts and workbooks, because I want people to be able to get help regardless of whether they can get in with me for one-on-one coaching or not. So courses soon on how to manage a team. That's what's coming up first. Writing that content now, should be released by the end of March. And I'm really excited about it. But for now, please subscribe to my podcast. If you're watching on YouTube, subscribe to my channel. And otherwise, you can always check us out at becoachable.com/podcast. And that is the place to look for all of our new podcast episodes. So thanks for joining today. And as always, if you want to reach out and ask any questions that you have about how to find a coach or where to locate one, or if you want to hear about any of the coaches that I mentioned today, you can always reach out to us there on the website. And connect with me on LinkedIn too. So Jill Chappie, just look for me on LinkedIn. You can follow me there, or certainly message me and ask me a question as well. Thanks for being here today, and I look forward to seeing you at my next podcast.
Thanks for tuning in to the Being Coachable podcast. I hope you found value in today's conversation. If you have any follow-up questions or want to continue the discussion, visit our website at becoachable.com and click on Contact. Join our mailing list to receive offers for reduced cost leadership assessments and team building sessions. You can also find show notes, past episode transcripts, and more resources on the podcast tab. I'll catch you on the next episode as we continue to maximize our potential and get coachable.